Or simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
A bakery in Ohio is awarded $25 million after university officials smear the staff as racists. Jane Austen is ditched from an English literature course. And Boris Johnson punishes Labour for failing to stand up for women's rights. This is Free Speech Nation. Welcome to Free Speech Nation. It was known as the Sphinx, a terrifying hybrid with the body of a lion and the head of a woman. According to the legend, the Sphinx was sent to guard the city of Thebes by the goddess Hera, who wanted to punish the citizens for some ancient crime. The Sphinx perched on a nearby mountain, and whenever anyone attempted either to enter or to leave the city, she would pose a riddle. If the traveller failed to answer, he or she would be devoured. But this was no normal riddle. It was so confounding, so esoteric, so abstruse, that even the great intellectuals of the day soon found themselves in the stomach of the mighty Sphinx. And what was this riddle? What was the question that foxed even the sharpest of minds? It was simply this: what is a woman? Even now, I'm sure most of you are thinking to yourselves, how could one possibly answer such a metaphysical conundrum? And you're not alone, so take a look at this.
I'm going to finish up then, because this hasn't been very helpful, with a very simple question for the department, and that is one which has troubled me for a great deal of time with the bureaucracy here. Can someone please provide me with a definition of what a woman is? Department of Health. Definition of a man, definition of a woman. Anyone?
It's pretty basic.
Basic stuff. Professor Murphy.
I think there are a variety of definitions, and I think
just a simple
perhaps to give a more fulsome answer, we should take that on notice.
You're going to take on notice the question of what a woman is?
No, well, there are a variety. It's a very contested space at the moment, Senator.
It's not just a woman who's born a woman.
But there are definitions in terms of how people identify themselves. So we're happy to provide our working definition
is
on
one of the. I've only been here 2 years. That's the best thing I've seen thus far. Thank you so much.
Now, that's the Department of Health. So if ever I fall ill in Australia, I am definitely not going to the hospital. They might accidentally try and give me a smear test or something. And what about Joe Biden's appointee to the Supreme Court? Can she enlighten us?
Can you provide a definition for the word woman?
Can I provide a definition?
Mm-hmm.
No.
Yeah.
I can't.
You can't?
Not in this context.
So
I'm not a biologist.
The meaning of the word woman is so unclear and controversial that you can't give me a definition?
Senator, in my work as a judge, what I do is I address disputes. If there's a dispute about a definition, people make arguments, and I look at the law and I decide.
Well,
so I'm not.
The fact that you can't give me a straight answer about something as fundamental as what a woman is underscores the dangers of the kind of progressive education that we are hearing about.
So Ketanji Brown Jackson's answer there says she's not a biologist, and it's true, she's not a biologist. So how could she possibly know what a woman is? It's the same reason I don't know the difference between a cat and a dog, because I'm not a zoologist. Right? It's why when a friend asked me where I was going for my holidays this year, I told him I didn't know because I'm not a cartographer. You know, it's why if anyone ever asks me to call them on the phone, I tell them I can't because I'm not Alexander Graham Bell. But look, that's Australia and America. Now, surely our elected representatives here in the UK won't have a problem with questions of this kind. Let's see what happened when the leader of the opposition was asked whether women have penises.
A woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not. I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know.
Sorry, have I
get this
offended you in some way?
No. It's just no. I just.
A woman can have a penis.
I don't think that discussing this issue in this way helps anyone in the long run.
And how about Annalise Dodds, the Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equality? So surely she would be the most qualified to know what a woman is.
Labour's definition of a woman?
Well, I have to say that there are different definitions legally around what a woman actually is. I mean, you look at the definition within the Equality Act, and I think it just says someone who is adult and female, I think, but then doesn't say how you define either of those things. I mean, obviously, that's then you've got the biological definition, legal definition, all this kind of thing.
With respect, I didn't ask for that. What's the Labour definition?
Well, I think with respect, Emma, I think it does depend what the context is, surely. I mean, surely that is important here.
OK, she's struggling, OK. But what does her predecessor, Dawn Butler, have to say about all this?
When a child is born, they are identified and observed in a particular sex, aren't they?
The child is born without sex, and the child is formed without sex in the beginning, but anyway.
I don't hold...
A child is born without biological sex? OK, well, I guess the midwife just flips a coin or something. Now, all of these clips I've shown you are from politicians on the left, and by failing to stand up for women's rights, they've left an open goal for the Tories. And this week, Boris Johnson scored. He said, "I don't think that it's reasonable for kids to be deemed so-called Gillick competent to take decisions about their gender or irreversible treatments that they may have. I think there should be parental involvement at the very least. I also don't think that biological males should be competing in female sporting events. I happen to think that women should have spaces which are dedicated to women. That doesn't mean I'm not immensely sympathetic to people who want to change gender, to transition, and it's vital that we give people the maximum love and support in making those decisions." Do you see how easy that was? I mean, he didn't obfuscate, he just said what we all know to be true. And given that women are 50% of the electorate, and the other 50% do have a basic understanding of biology, he just gave his party a huge boost. Now, I've never voted Tory in my life, but I do know that Labour's credibility will continue to suffer until it gets to grips with this issue. And let's not forget that feminists are overwhelmingly left-wing, but they are now often writing articles for right-leaning publications or being offered platforms by right-wing commentators because the culture war isn't about left versus right, it's about truth versus fiction. And by the way, it hasn't escaped the attention of feminists that the question, what is a man, mysteriously rarely seems to be asked. Of course, activists are now doubling down. They're trying to frame the question, what is a woman, as some kind of gotcha. But a gotcha is a tricky question that exposes something embarrassing that the interviewee has either said or done in the past. It's not just a simple question that any moderately intelligent 4-year-old could answer. To ask a politician the question, what is a woman, isn't a gotcha, because they know the answer. And they know that we know that they know the answer. It isn't that they can't define it, it's that they're too scared to define it because they've been so cowed and intimidated by activists. It would be one thing if these politicians had bought into gender identity ideology to such an extent that they no longer believe in biological sex differences. I mean, that would be deranged, but at least it would be forgivable. But that's not what's happening here. While most of us have a limited understanding of various key political issues, we can all see that a failure to define woman is either delusional or dishonest, neither of which are qualities that we seek in our elected representatives. The question, what is a woman, has become a litmus test. It's not a gotcha, it's not transphobic, it's a means by which we can assess the honesty of the ruling class. And if they can't speak openly about the things we all know to be true, we won't be able to trust them when it comes to anything else. My studio guests this evening are actor and writer Tobias Pearson and comedian Leo Kearse. Tobias, I should say, has come all the way over from Sweden. Not just for this, though. But
yes.
Oh, OK.
Please love me.
Thank you, Tobias. Do you know what a woman is?
I don't know.
No.
I have a mother, but he's very... yeah.
And, of course, Leo, you're a regular on our show. How are you doing this week?
I'm OK.
Yeah?
Yeah.
How's married life? It's relatively recent for you.
I think I married a woman. I'm not totally sure.
OK.
Yeah.
You have to check. You do have to check these days. All right, well, let's get some questions from our lovely audience here. We've got a question here first from Paul. Where's Paul?
Hello. Here. Hi, Andrew.
Hello.
Hi. The question I've got is, does the freedom to protest now come at a price?
The freedom to protest. So now, this will be related to the this case in Ohio. This is very interesting to me. So it was an appeals court in Ohio upheld their order for Oberlin College to pay a local bakery a massive $25 million after they labelled the family-owned business racist. So let me explain what happened here. This was a very interesting one. This was just in the aftermath of the Black Lives Matter protests in summer of 2020. And a young student had shoplifted some wine from Gibson's Bakery and was apprehended. The student in this case was black, and as a result, lots of protesters gathered around and said that the shop had a history of racially profiling people and that the staff were racist. There was no evidence for this whatsoever, and lots of witnesses turned up and said, hang on a minute, this has never happened. You know, this bakery has employed black people in the past. There's been no suggestion of any racism whatsoever. But in that febrile climate, that was what happened. Now, the college got involved, started helping to distribute leaflets saying that this bakery is racist, the staff that work there are racist. They actually excused students off lessons so they could go to the protest. They effectively helped with the smear campaign. And now the bakery has sued them. So, Leo, I'm quite interested in this because we're so used to Twitter and the online world where everyone just calls everyone racist, even when it's not true. Yeah. They call people fascist, neo-Nazi, transphobe, everything. And whenever I see those words now, I just assume it's not true, because it never is, right? And now, though, someone's actually stood up to them and got money. Is this going to change things?
Yeah, a lot of money as well as the 25 million. There's another 6.5 million, so it's 31.5 million, including their legal fees. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully this is going to draw a line in the croissants and stop this sort of thing happening. But I mean, in defence of the student, I mean, it was a mostly peaceful shoplifting. It was. I mean, if you look at all the stuff that he didn't steal, in fact, on the balance, the percentage of the stock in the shop that was left, he actually didn't, you know, he stole far less than 50%. Yeah, no, that's pretty good. Really, he left things in the shop. He should be defined by what he left. And yeah, I just can't believe that, you know, defamation cases like this usually hinge on the actual material damage and the loss. So how many bread rolls was this place selling if they can be sued for like $25 million?
But it's interesting, isn't it? Because like there were massive protests, students outside screaming, "These people are racist," placards and everything, and they just weren't racist. Worse still, the student admitted to the shoplifting. Like, this wasn't a case that...
They were found guilty, right?
Well, he admitted it.
Yeah.
Like,
so what's the...
Well, you would think that would be the end of it, right? But no, then there were protests and all sorts of things, and it's very weird. I mean...
It's a weird world, yeah.
What were they suggesting? What...
It's a weird thing, because everyone says, what's a woman? I don't know. What's a racist? This guy. Yeah, but everyone suddenly knows, right?
It's very bizarre. Yeah. You know? I mean, we all get called all sorts of stuff online.
It's not legal to shoplift, right? You can't just take a bottle of alcohol and say...
No,
it's mine because
in Sweden that's okay, is that right?
Yeah, of course, yeah. You have to,
Yeah, you don't have money, you don't have currency.
No, we pay taxes and then we die. Okay. We have to get drunk in order to... But it's weird,
It's a very strange one, but I am very, you know, I'm quite hopeful because I sort of think, you know, if it comes to the point where, because people are so free and easy about these accusations online, and I get so used to it now. I've been called a Nazi so often. I just think, yeah, okay, why not? That's fine.
You might as well join.
Might as well embrace it.
Yeah, embrace it.
It's so
weird. I can't help but feel that the barrier for being considered a Nazi has come down somewhat since 1935.
It has.
You know, I think if Hitler came back tomorrow and saw the state of modern Nazis, he'd be like, oh my God, what went wrong?
I know.
They're all eating hummus.
So, given that, you know, I mean, if I could get like even just a million every time I was called a Nazi, that would be pretty good.
Yeah.
I'd be absolutely loaded.
This is fantastic.
Well,
Nazi gold, what's wrong with that?
Exactly. Yeah. Maybe I should look into it. But I think this could signal a change. You get accused of a few things, but it's true in your case, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I mean,
it ends up in my posters.
Yeah,
usually,
exactly.
So,
yeah.
I mean, this guy was actually shoplifting, right? He was stealing alcohol. So this is not a black issue. It's a red or white issue because it's wine, right?
Exactly. Thank you, Tobias.
Thank you. Came all the way for
all the way
show.
from Sweden. That's the kind of thing. That's the reason we invited him over. Didn't pay for the flight, but you know, you're here now. Let's get another question now. This is from Olivia. Where is Olivia?
Hi.
Hi, Olivia.
My question is, should the Pussycat dolls be renamed Kitty Cat dolls?
Interesting. So so basically, this charity has reworked Edward Lear's poem, The Owl and the Pussycat, but they've reworked it in order to teach 7-year-olds about trans rights. Obviously, that's what you should do. But the title has been renamed The Owl and the Kitty Cat. Because of the P word's linguistic connotations. I hope Mrs. Slocum isn't watching this because, you know, what do we think of this? Why are they changing that word? It's so obviously innocuous. Well, firstly, if you want to teach kids about trans rights, why would you rewrite an existing poem?
Yeah.
You know, and secondly, why is that word? It's a pussycat.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that is the original use of the word, and it comes from pusillanimous. It's not from any sort of,
That's knowledge, etymological knowledge, right there. That's pretty impressive.
So it's not any sort of genitalia related word.
No.
So this is ridiculous. I mean, where's it going to end? Are we going to have James and the body positive peach? Charlie and the ethical vegan commune? Like,
that's fantastic.
To be fair, I would read that.
Yeah.
I think that sounds good. What do you make of this one?
I think, they could change the Tom Jones song. What's new, Kitty Cat? Whoa! I don't know.
Well, I mean,
it's just silly. Yeah, I agree with you. Why do they bring an old poem in and sort of change that instead of just doing a trans thing?
Well, it's very. There seems to be something within the whole sort of whatever we call this woke movement, critical social justice movement, that wants to kind of revise things. So rather than say create
and purify
purify the past. But in addition to that, so rather than sort of create a new non-binary black action hero, they'll just change James Bond into a woman or something. Why not just create your own stuff? I mean, that's fine. Wasn't there that filmmaker, some filmmaker, but albeit a TikTok filmmaker, was going to remake all of Harry Potter, but with entirely ethnic minority and non-binary cast.
Oh, God.
I'm sure that'd be really popular. I'm sure that'd be great. What do they do? Just make your own wizard world with non-binary people.
They always say, James Bond has to be black, woman. We need a James Bond in a wheelchair, otherwise it's pointless. It's just,
make the action sequences a bit more challenging.
Yeah, exactly,
But I wouldn't have a problem. I honestly wouldn't have a problem with that. Make your own film, make your own thing. But it's this revision. But as for, Pussycat dolls, I mean, Kitty Cat dolls actually weirdly sounds almost more filthy in a way, doesn't it? I don't know why that is. I can't put my finger on it. Anyway.
The Kitty Cat monologue. No, that could be.
But tiny changes can make a big difference. There's a big difference between a woman calling you daddy during the act of coitus and calling you dad. It's. Do you know what?
I don't want to even imagine.
This was going to be a clean show.
It's still clean at the moment, but I worry about where this is going.
It's not going anywhere.
Not going any further than
staying in this room.
But you've created lots of images in my head now. Okay, I don't thank you for that. Okay, let's move on. Oh, thank you, Leo. Let's get another question. So, you're waving at me. Jan, is it? Jan, what's your question, Jan?
The question is, should we be rewriting history?
Well, we've just been getting there, but I think you're alluding to this Cambridge Latin textbook. Now, some of you may have seen this article, because this threw me a bit. This was earlier this week, and it's a Cambridge Latin textbook is to be rewritten because one of its Roman characters owned a slave.
Oh, no.
So the court... Well, look... Yes, of course, I know that Tobias is here to defend slave owning, but the course books, they've been used in classrooms for decades. It's going to be revised because portrayals of ancient life have apparently proved problematic for modern pupils. Right, so Roman society, I mean, there were a lot of slaves there. That might be why he owned a slave, because he was Roman.
Yeah, because it was Roman times and they had slaves. Might be a reason.
That might be one of the reasons.
Yeah, and they crucified people and they threw people to lions and stuff.
They did all sorts of things that we don't approve of. I mean, I don't approve of that.
No, you don't?
Throwing people to lions.
No, okay,
no, I draw the line at that.
Yeah.
But, what's happening here, Leo?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be revisionist and projecting 2022's woke morals on the Roman times. It's the Roman times. People got in, big amphitheatres and killed giraffes with swords. It wasn't a time of intersectional feminism. It's ridiculous. I mean, I looked at the textbook and there's other stuff. None of them had electric vehicles.
None of them were vaccinated.
None of them were vaccinated.
No.
But I'm pretty sure every Roman person knew what a woman was. I'm pretty sure.
Pretty sure. Although
they knew.
But this is a very odd one to me because it's one thing to sort of say, well, look, the Romans kept slaves, the ancient Greeks kept slaves, and we don't approve of that, and let's have a discussion with the kids about why we don't approve of that and all the rest of it. But to sort of just delete the text, say we're not going to use the text anymore because of it. What happens to Ovid? What happens to Virgil?
Yeah.
I mean, what are we going to do about it?
And to be doing it at a time, like right now, there's more slavery in the world than there was at the height of the transatlantic slave trade. Yeah. It's happening in China with Uyghur Muslims, it's happening in Libya, it's happening in places where it's not being done by British people. So woke people don't want to stand up and point the finger and shout at them because that might be problematic to other woke people. So the fact that they've got to go back, 2,000 years to find problematic slavery instead of just looking at the stuff that's happening now and actually having a positive impact on things that they can change.
So what is this? I mean, is this just a failure of imagination? Because, we see activists talking about how, we want to tear down statues of even slavery abolitionists like Thomas Henry Huxley or Abraham Lincoln. There was another one the other week, but I can't remember. Or Mahatma Gandhi. Now Mahatma Gandhi said some things about African people that we would find abhorrent, right? We would. Because, he was born in a different
But he did some
time.
good things, right? Yeah.
Well, I mean, kicking the British out of
Yes.
India, you'd think he'd get a bit of a free pass for that. But apparently, no, that's got to come down as well. So I wonder, is it just a failure of imagination? Is it just historical illiteracy? Why is it that they can't understand that had they been born, these activists, had they been born in the 1800s, they would probably feel
They would have done the same thing, yeah.
Right, so why can't they see that?
I think you had a point. I mean, it's always easier to look back and judge people instead of saying, looking at what's going on now. In Libya and a lot of African countries have slavery.
Well, it's harder, isn't it?
Yeah, because you have to leave your internet cafe and, oh, God, and it's boring.
Yeah.
So he was a racist, born 2,000 years ago. Everyone was a racist, and they didn't know anything about...
Is it quite a good way to signal that your virtue? Because, is there a supply and demand issue? Because, you don't see racists out and about because racists know that they better keep their mouths shut because we all hate them.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, there is everybody wants to spot racism so they can call it out on Twitter. But there isn't enough supply of... I mean, have we got any...
give us a chair.
No arms going up. And according to Twitter, this is where they'd be. So...
we got one Nazi, but we need more.
Yeah.
We need to build
just
up.
a Nazi panel. We're trying to balance things out, OK. Well, look, anyway, we've got to go to a break now. Fascinating stuff. So after the break on Free Speech Nation, we're going to be discussing the whole conversion therapy for Aurora. See you in a minute.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Free Speech Nation. Boris Johnson's position on conversion therapy has led to a backlash from some Tory MPs. The government is pushing ahead with a ban on conversion therapy, which aims to change the sexual orientation of lesbian, gay and bisexual people. However, ministers are ready to exclude trans people from the ban of conversion therapy in favour of what they call a more sensitive approach. Joining me now to discuss this issue are barristers Sarah Phillimore and Dennis Kavanagh. Everyone. Thank you both very much for joining me today. Now, Sarah, I want to come to you first because this issue has caused huge confusion across the board. There's a protest going on today about it. And when people discuss conversion therapy, it feels like often, depending on who you're talking to, people mean different things. Can you sort of clarify what's happened here? What is the background?
Yeah, it is complicated. As simply as I can, most people understand conversion therapy is an attempt to persuade somebody out of their sexual orientation. That can be by praying for them at one end of the scale, to physical assault and corrective rape at the other. So there's no evidence that it's effective in any way. There's also, however, no real evidence that it's prevalent in this country. However, I think most people are perfectly happy with the law sending a clear message that to attempt to convert someone out of their sexual orientation is just a waste of time and causes harm. So no one has a problem with that. The difficulty has arisen is this. There has been an elision of homosexuality with gender identity. And these are two substantially different things. And they mean very different things for children and adults. And that's where it starts to get really messy. Because for 4 years, the government were quite happily going along with, we will bring in this bill, we will outlaw it in time for our wonderful, shiny conference in the summer. But things began to happen to derail this. The most important thing, I think, in January of this year, the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which was the body set up by statute to promote and protect the rights in the Equality Act, so it's a really authoritative body, they wrote a response to the government's consultation going, well, hang on a minute, you haven't defined the two key terms of your proposed legislation. What do you mean by transgender? And what do you mean by talking conversion therapy? So those are without definition. And the problem we know for children is this. The vast majority, I think studies say between 60 to 90% of children who are gender variant, who express unhappiness with their sexed bodies, if they're left to go through puberty, they will desist. And they will be happy, often as happy gay children.
Exactly.
So this is the big problem. If the consultation had proceeded without this intervention, there would have been a law that potentially criminalised offering therapy to these children. So that was January. Then in February, the CAS report issued its interim report. Only interim, already 112 pages, pointing out we've got a culture. This kind of treatment is like no other. There is a culture of unquestioning affirmation. So young children would say, I feel a bit confused and unhappy, and which of us didn't when going through puberty? Then they're immediately put on a path of puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones and surgery. The consequences for their adult life are grave and serious with regard to their fertility and their adult sexual function. So after, I think, the report from the EHRC and the CAS review, no responsible government could have continued along that path. But what we've got in response are people out on the streets protesting. We've got MPs writing newspaper articles saying this is appalling. So I think it's a wider problem here, not just for these children. It's a sort of a death of an ability to look at the evidence and to deal with it in a rational way. We've just got people running around like headless chickens shrieking torture.
Well,
and
they've
very
misunderstood, haven't they? Because when they think of conversion therapy, they think of the kind of thing that existed maybe back in the 60s where people were, you know, they had electric shock therapy to quote-unquote cure them of their homosexuality. And they think that's the same as a therapist talking to a child about feelings of gender dysphoria. Can I come to you on this, Dennis? Because why does this have a particularly dangerous ramification for gay children?
Well, the problem we've got at the moment, as I think we've spoken about in the past, is that homophobia often attends referrals to gender identity services. And I've spoken to you in the past about a case called Appleby and Tavistock, where the Times report on it said there was a dark joke amongst staff, soon there will be no gay children left. This is a new form of conversion therapy. We've got a situation here where referrals from young girls to the Tavistock between 2009 and 2019 went up by over 5,000%.
Now, why is that? Is that down to social contagion? Is that down to fashion? What is that?
Nobody knows, and nobody's bothered to look.
Right.
Now, you know, if you had a 5,000% increase in any other medical condition, someone would say, hang on, what's going on here? But when we look at this cohort, we've got gay children, autistic children, children leaving care. No one seems to care. And more than that, we've got ideologically driven charities who are saying this, basically. It's not what's in the best interests of the child, it's what's in the best interests of the ideology. And in that same case I just mentioned, Appleby and Tavistock, the court said one of the problems doctors here have is this: there are charities which are making clinical decisions more difficult. Now, that's a lawyer's phrase, clinical decisions more difficult. What does that mean? That means we've got children subject to lifelong medicalisation because nobody was prepared to say I'm interested in what's going on here.
So just to be absolutely clear about this, so a gender non-conforming child, a child who isn't typically masculine, it's, say a girl who isn't typically feminine, doesn't like wearing dresses but likes playing football, or the reverse, a little boy who prefers being girly in the traditional sense. These kids go along to the clinics and they are told, well, if you feel like you're not a boy or not a girl, that's true. You're definitely not. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. Well, what they're being told is you were born in the wrong body, and we need to fix you. We need to correct you.
And a lot of these kids will just turn out to be gay.
Well, as Sarah just said, the vast majority grow up to be happy, well-adjusted homosexuals.
So this is confusing, Sarah, because in effect, when we talk about conversion therapy for gay people, that's one thing. And then we've got therapy relating to gender dysphoria, which is where therapists are able to explore why children have these feelings. But that is being bracketed and branded alongside what we all agree is a terrible thing, gay conversion therapy. But this is very different. Is that what's going on?
I think that's exactly what's going on. And as Dennis said, the focus is on the ideology, not the children.
Right.
The children just appear to be being fed into this ideological sausage machine. Yeah. If you express any confusion or distaste for your sex body, you must be another sex, another gender. And it's completely different to a sexual orientation, which is, as far as I'm aware, Dennis will correct me if I'm wrong, is fixed fairly early on, is pretty stable. I mean, obviously people can be bisexual, but it's not the same as being a young person with vulnerabilities, possibly autism, trauma in your background. I mean, just for an example, in the whole of my career, 20 years, up until 2020, I had not one single case involving a transgender child. I deal with child protection cases when local authorities remove children from their parents because they're at risk of significant harm. In 2020, I had 3. And it's going to be interesting to see then how many in 2021 and 2022. But there's something very wrong going on here in that vulnerable children, it's simply assumed that it must be an issue about your gender identity, and we all know what the treatment for that is: lifelong medication and possibly surgery.
OK, but if, you know, in some of the cases, I mean, you say a lot of these kids desist if they're allowed to go through puberty in the natural way, but then some won't, and some will have gender dysphoria, and they will be trans people as adults. So where does that leave them?
Well, what we've got at the moment is a service that doesn't help them at all because it's completely overwhelmed. So for people that do need this treatment, because of an affirmation-only approach, because doctors are being silenced, because doctors are being told not to challenge, not only does this damage people who'd otherwise just grow up to be well-adjusted homosexuals, it damages trans people, because they're stuck in a situation where they're at the back of an overwhelmed service that can't attend to their needs because the doctors and the wider structures are not differentiating accurately enough between people with gender dysphoria that's going to persist and going to be part of their life, who need to be helped, who deserve the best medical care possible, and people who are being caught up in this system because we're too afraid as a society to ask questions because of allegations of hatefulness. And that is ideology over child protection.
And yet it's the opposite, isn't it, of hate? Because, you know, you hear testimonies from various people who've detransitioned since, and the one thing that recurs and comes back again and again, they always say, we were just affirmed, our feelings were affirmed, no one asked questions, no one tried to talk to us about this, and now they regret it. And that's a real problem, isn't it, at the heart of the system?
It is. I mean, it's a broader problem in that there are moves throughout the child protection system. You must listen to the voice of the child. You must hear what the child says. And to a degree, I absolutely agree with that. But the problem is when you're 9 and Dr. Mike Webberley is offering you testosterone, you can't possibly be able to give informed consent about what that means. And I'll just remind people of one of the statements which the Tavistock put before the High Court in the first hearing of the Bell case, which they actually thought would help them, was from a child, I think, aged about 12, who said, well, I was asked about relationships and stuff, but it's not really on my radar. And the Tavistock thought that actually helped their case to show that this child, who was now going to lose probably all chance of ever having their own children, having an adult sexual response, he would probably not be able to have an orgasm. This child was to make that decision, and we just had to listen to it.
And to be clear, the Tavistock Clinic is the paediatric gender clinic run by the NHS.
It's the only specialist clinic, and as the Cass review said, the model just doesn't work. And as Dennis has said, I quite accept there's going to be, I think, a very small minority, but there's going to be a small minority of children who are gender dysphoric, who will be assisted by medication and surgery, but they are a tiny, tiny minority. And obviously the consequences for those who are not gender dysphoric, I mean, you can't put bits of the body back on once they've been taken off. We're not Lego.
And there have been whistleblowers from the Tavistock Clinic, and they've been treated quite badly, haven't
Well, look
they?
what happened to Sonia Appleby.
Yeah.
I mean,
Can you tell us about that, because people may not know?
Well, Sonia Appleby was the lead safeguarding person at GID, so it was her job to look out for these children. She found herself sidelined. She found that staff were told not to bring concerns to her. She was able to inform the Tavistock about her fears that this was internalised homophobia from a lot of parents, because they were saying, I just can't possibly have a gay child. But all these
So that's
concerns...
a common thing, is it?
Yep. I think, as Dennis may have mentioned, it was a joke, apparently, at the Tavistock that soon there wouldn't be any gay people left.
So Dennis, let's bring you in there. So to an extent, is this idea almost medicalising homosexuality, trying to fix it, I suppose, if you like?
I'm afraid that there is that dark element to it, because what it comes to, as I think we've discussed before, is this. If you're playing with the wrong toys as a child, some adults say, well, that is evidence that you need a lifetime of medication. And if that isn't correcting gender non-conforming behaviour, which very strongly correlates with homosexuality, then I don't know what is.
But, you know, I was a gender non-conforming child. I didn't play football. You know, lots of the people I know didn't go along with the traditional routes. The idea that people would have intervened and said, maybe you're not in the right body, that seems, well, I mean, almost abusive.
Yeah, it's abusive. It's picking on gay kids. It's picking on autistic kids. It's picking on care leavers. And then to wrap up, as is happening at the moment, proper clinical care and actually investigating what is going on. And to say that a discussion with a child about whether or not they are trans is conversion therapy, which is what was being proposed, is frankly a work of Orwellian nightmare. We've been living through an age of conversion therapy, as that dark joke at the Tavistock demonstrates.
So this is very confusing then, because a lot of this is about language, but it's also about the reaction of activists. Now, I've been looking over social media, which is probably the worst place to look, but even if you look at the protests and what people are saying, the view, and I believe it's a sincerely held view, is that people who are objecting to this, to what the Tavistock have done and the affirmatory approach, that people think that is genuine hatred. People equate this to people who wanted to change gay people, fix gay people back in the day. Is that really what how do we deal with that when that's the opposition?
We're in a really difficult position. I've thought about this long and hard in the last 3 years that I've been involved in this. I think there's a small minority of people who know exactly what they're doing. Their desire is for sex to be removed as a legally protected characteristic and replaced by gender expression. And I think there's a much larger number of people who, for all sorts of noble reasons, are going along with this because their analysis begins and ends with the mantra, stop torturing trans kid, trans rights are human rights. They don't think any further beyond that. And I do think most of them are motivated entirely for good and noble reasons. But right. I'm just so increasingly shocked. It's not just the man, the woman on the street going along this line. There are MPs writing articles saying this is appalling, the government must act, we must have conversion therapy bans. And these are our legislators. So this is not just the welfare of a whole generation of children, which is bad enough. This is about the rule of law and the health of our democracy.
So is the best approach to stop calling this conversion therapy the idea of a doctor talking to a child or trying to work out what might be wrong with a child who claims to be in the wrong body? We should stop calling that conversion therapy, because the implication of that is they are converting from something innate and fixed.
Exactly. I think, as the Cass Review pointed out very well, we've got two separate camps. There's one that thinks gender expression is something innate and immutable. And there's another group, which I personally think are right, that say gender expression is something that's fluid, is a reflection of your circumstances and your environment. And not all children who express unhappiness with their sex body will go on to express that unhappiness. But the problem is, once you've given cross-sex hormones to a 9-year-old, the door is shut. And that's what really, really worries me. So I think, look, we've just got to go back to basics. You cannot change your sex. If you're unhappy with the sex that you were born into, then that's really sad, and that is something we need to help you with. But there's a multiplicity of approaches. A very small minority of children may need medical and surgical intervention. A vast majority of those children will need somebody to talk to who's non-judgmental, who can guide them through the confusion and upset that they feel. And we've got to be alive to the fact that a lot of this is internalised homophobia. The quote I heard that shocked me the most was a man saying of his little boy, "I didn't want to see my son mincing. I wanted to see my daughter running." So this little girl, this little boy became a girl to suit her father's pleasure. And I think, as Dennis has commented, a reckoning is coming. This will be a generation of children whose lives have been blighted. And where were the adults? Where are the children's commissioners? There are 4 of them. England, Scotland, Ireland and Wales. Where are they? What have they said? Nothing.
Or where are the autism charities on this? Why, when Keira Bell went to the High Court, Keira Bell, a lesbian, a detransitioner, and said, I went through this partly because I was suffering with internalised homophobia. Where were the gay charities? They should have been stood there with her. They should have been saying, this is happening to lesbians. But no one's on the pitch. As you say, Sarah, we don't see the Children's Commission. Where are the children's charities? Where is this vast apparatus that we have in the United Kingdom of government bodies, of charity bodies, all of whom are very good at attending black tie dinners and putting out tweets? Where are they when these kids are in court saying, I've been permanently damaged because you lot wouldn't ask doctors questions?
Well, look, this is a very, very complicated issue, as I think has been exposed by the fact that, by the way that we've been talking about it. But it is important that we have these conversations, that they continue to do so. So thank you both, Sarah and Dennis, for coming on.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. After the break on Free Speech Nation, Tobias Pearson and Leo Kurz are going to be returning for Devil's Advocate. See you in 2 minutes.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Every night at 11 on GBNews, we bring you the next day's stories the day before. It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So later in the show, I'm going to be turning agony uncle with the help of my beautiful panel, Tobias Pearson and Leo Kearse, and we're going to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. If you've got any problems whatsoever, just email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk, and we're going to sort your life out. Basically, that's what we do here, kind of. Now, this part of the show is called Devil's Advocate. This is where my panel are going to argue about one of the great hot potatoes of the day, and I've literally just been informed that they'd like to argue about declaring one's pronouns. Who would like to go first here?
Can I go first?
Yes, please. Tobias Pearson, everyone.
Thank you. I'm just going to say, I love people, and I think people are more interesting and more complex and beautiful than, declaring pronouns and saying, hello, I'm this, I'm bisexual. It's like wearing a name tag. It makes people boring. That's the first thing they tell you nowadays. They say, hello, just so you know, I'm transsexual. And I go, yes, it's fine. I'm still going to have a Diet Coke, a cheeseburger. It's just, And I want to know, who are you? I told you, I'm pansexual. I'm broccolisexual. No, who are you? Do you believe in ghosts? Can you play an instrument? Have you shagged a sheep? Oh, sorry. Have you... tell me something about you, right? Imagine if Titanic happened today. It would be a different film, different story, right? Quick to the lifeboats. Women and children first. Excuse me, what's a woman? We don't have time for this. Don't you oppress me. Microaggression. So I think people are more rich and interesting, and then you're declaring, you're on a name tag. It's boring, right? So people should be more interesting than that.
That's a very convincing argument. Thank you, Tobias. And to counter that, to really lock horns, we're going to go over to Scotland, and it's Leo Kearse.
Yeah. I think it's really important. It's really good to declare pronouns, and it's not just because I'm from a country where a lot of women have hair on their faces and a lot of the men wear tartan mini dresses. It's declaring your pronouns. If you use they, them, you feel better if you're ordering a family bucket of chicken. And it's incredibly useful. I had an email this week from somebody called Steve, and if he hadn't put in brackets he/him in his email signature, I would have had no idea what gender Steve was. There was no clue in any name or anything like that. So you can see there's a valuable purpose. Also they can be used for humour. My friend Sam, she's a big lass. I mean, a real big lass, and she works for Google, which is a really woke company. So in meetings, they often have to declare their pronouns, and they were going round, and everybody was saying, I am, whatever it is, Samantha, they, them, whatever. She, they, and I got to Sam, and she was like, I'm Sam, and my pronouns are fee, fi, fo, and fum. And I thought that was great. But yeah, the most useful way of declaring pronouns is to know who to avoid on Twitter. Who's gonna say that you should die in a grease fire? If somebody declares their pronouns, you instantly know their opinion on Brexit, on Donald Trump, and straight white men, and you know if you need to avoid them or not. So it's very useful.
Leo Kearse, everyone. Well, I'm persuaded by both. I think it's very interesting, but it's becoming... I don't know whether the audience here have experienced this, but increasingly people are declaring pronouns in meetings or being asked to do it. I should have got you all to do it at the start of the show. That would have been that would have been a really interesting experiment to see who would have done it, because it actually, I think a lot of people find it hard in the workplace to say, actually, I don't want to do that, because... Yeah. And I think it's because it's been framed as like an inclusive, compassionate thing just to make everyone feel welcome. But really what it is a kind of test. It's basically saying, do you agree with gender identity ideology, which the vast majority of people simply don't. So it's almost like going around saying, right, I want you to declare your faith in Baal or declare your faith in Thor, whatever, before every meeting. It's like asking for people to state a religious conviction that they may not have. It's really worrying.
Yeah. Like the Spanish Inquisition, a
little bit.
And it's expanding into... I saw a video this week where people, in the video, they were announcing not just their gender pronouns, but they were also announcing what they were. So, I'd be like, I'm Leo, I'm a male with brown hair, and my pronouns are, she and they, or whatever it is.
Yes.
So it's expanding. It's filling all the available bandwidth.
There was a viral clip that went from Microsoft, and they were doing all that thing about describing their hair, their skin colour, what tattoos they had, but they were also describing the land that they were sitting on, what the land used to be occupied by, and it used to be occupied by various to sort of pay reparations for the fact that the ancestors stole the land or something. And these things, it's become like a game of Guess Who. Yeah. Where they start describing every single feature of I think with that it was partly for partially sighted people. Yeah. To describe, but why?
Well, with the video I watched, it was before they went into schools to groom children into gender ideology. It was the family sex show. So they're basically doing a show for 5-year-olds with nakedness, talking about queerness and gender identity and other things that, you can maybe just wait until they're 6.
It's a little bit more mature, yeah.
So I do worry about, look, I think if someone transitions and they've gone through all that, it's not easy.
No, of course not.
Using the name that they want to be called by, the pronouns, if they've, but when it's neo-pronouns, when it's things like fee, fi and fo, which is not too far away from what people say, or je and je is a common one. I saw one on Twitter the other day, which was toy and toy self.
Toy self?
Toy self, because her identity is based on toys.
Yeah.
I wish I was making that up. I'm absolutely not making that up. So, theoretically, we could all have our own pronouns. I mean, that's going to get very confusing, isn't it?
But so how are you going to play Shakespeare in the future? Hello, I'm Hamlet. He, she, or he, or
well, you say that, but the Netflix series of The Sandman, when that was announced, they announced the cast's pronouns. Even Death, the character playing Death. So now we know that Death is he, him, which is good to know.
Really? Is that a he? Okay.
Death is a he, apparently.
Yeah.
In this manifestation.
Okay, yeah.
So, but it's very confusing. And similarly with the they, them, increasingly media outlets are using they, them for people like Sam Smith. But when you read the articles, I can't understand that. They don't make sense. And halfway through you think, who are you talking to? Who are you talking about? Are there now multiple Sam Smiths? What's going on here?
I think Sam Smith could do his bit. Just meet me halfway in his transition to a group of people. Just at least grow an extra head or something like that.
Absolutely. Well, I hope I'm sure he's watching.
Sorry, they are watching, yeah.
Sorry, I'm sure them's watching.
Them's watching.
OK, we're going to go to a break now. Coming up on Free Speech Nation, there's going to be an exclusive clip from my podcast this week with Emma Webb. Please don't go away.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
To Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. On my upcoming podcast episode, I'm joined by political commentator and formerly the Deputy Research Director of the Free Speech Union, Emma Webb. In our conversation, we talked about free speech, the nature of the culture war, preserving our heritage, including statues, and how we can get out of what we call the counter-enlightenment.
It's the same with the debate around statues and heritage. I was involved in setting up Save Our Statues, which was an organisation intended to help protect heritage. And that was because people on the ground were concerned about their statues in their local town. If people can remember Baden-Powell's statue, when they wanted to take that down, locals came out and practically fought people off from taking their statue away. Because this is what happens when the phenomenon comes for the things that you love and for the
was
things
that in
that you...
Blackpool, I think, was it? The Baden-Powell statue?
Poole? I think
was
it's
it
in Poole.
I knew there was a
Somewhere
pool
in the
it.
south, I think.
Okay.
But this is what happens when this phenomenon comes for the things that you love. We can call it cancel culture, but I think it's something far greater and more sophisticated and actually more worrying than that term can encapsulate.
Well,
and it is coming for, in a sense, in a Scrutonian sense, your home, the things that you hold with great affection. And I think when that happens, that's when people will set up and realise that they need to take part in the pushback.
And it seems endless. I mean, you know, at GBNews, we are reporting on statues being removed weekly, really, because the campaign groups that are wanting to do this, firstly, they've got a list of the statues they want to target, and there are many, many more to come. And they have institutional power. They appear to have the complete support of people such as Sadiq Khan. Whenever we see public consultations regarding statues, in almost every case, the public overwhelmingly reject the idea that the statue should be modified or removed or anything.
And then very often they take it down anyway.
And they do it anyway, and it's just ignored. So there we have, if we want to talk about institutional power, isn't that where it lies?
Yeah, and I think as well that it's so much of this, as you were saying, is about language. And it's about what people say rather than what they do. And when it comes to historical figures as well, Livingstone is a perfect example of this.
So this is in Glasgow, right?
Glasgow City Council released another, should we call it a hit list, of naughty statues.
Yeah.
And Livingstone, who spent his life campaigning for the abolition of slavery, was put on this list just simply because as a child he worked in a cotton mill.
Yes,
child labour as well.
Right. He's sort of the victim there, I would suggest.
You would think, but no, he's implicated in slavery. There's the same with Rostat, Tobias Rostat, whose memorial was disputed in Cambridge, and recently that case was also won in favour of keeping the memorial in place. These tenuous links that people, these activists will find between these individuals.
Can you talk me through that though? Because there was also the bust of Thomas Henry Huxley at Imperial College, another explicitly anti-slavery abolitionist figure. How is it that why is it that these activists, rather than just focusing on Edward Colston or the slave traders, are now trying to problematise those who abolished slavery?
This is the word magic again, and I to be very cynical about it, I would say that it's the same as with trying to cancel people's speech, that if you go for the people who are saying the most innocuous things, then that will really terrify everyone. And so if you can get the statues taken down of those who campaigned for the abolition of slavery on the basis that those people are also white supremacists. And why are they white supremacists? Well, because they participated in structural oppression. They lived at a time and were operating at a time when they were participating in white supremacy, and therefore are tarred by association simply almost by being born as a powerful white man in a particular period of history. And so by association, absolutely everything. Same with when they tried to remove the statues. I believe it was the British Library. They wanted to remove the statues of Beethoven and Mendelssohn. Going for Beethoven, Mendelssohn, and abolitionists over, say, statues of people who were, overtly terrible, like Hitler. That sends a message of power, I think.
Right.
And it is a terrifying one, and that's why when I think people who get cancelled, particularly feminists, get cancelled for saying something that everybody pretty much around the country believes, it sends shivers down everyone's spines and makes them shut up. And so whether it's being done consciously or not, I think that also perhaps has something to do with power.
So how do we address that? Because if it is the case that the public are going to be ignored, this is an anti-democratic process. Statues are going to come down, streets are going to be renamed, whether we like it or not, all of which was predicted in 1984, by the way. It's as though they're following it as a guidebook. And it's become a cliche, but it's an unavoidable one now. So this is very much a top-down thing, it seems to me. How can you possibly do anything about that if they're willing to dispense with the idea of democratic process?
I wish that there was a solution in Orwell to the problem, because I remember as well at the time.
It ends before the solution comes. Yeah.
Exactly. The solution is just that your face gets eaten by rats.
Yeah.
I remember when Sadiq Khan actually launched his statue commission, that I wrote a piece for The Spectator referring to that particular quote from 1984.
Every street will be renamed.
Every book will be rewritten, and didn't even realise at the time how true that was going to be. I was referring specifically to the statue review, but since we've seen people like Clancy having to rewrite her, Kate Clancy having to rewrite her own memoirs, to rewrite her memories, essentially.
Yes.
And all of these, books that and authors that have been cancelled or had their books pulled, and all of these things. I don't know what the solution is, but I do think that, firstly, small civil society action is important. So in local areas, there have been a number of successes, whether it is to do with free speech or it is to do with heritage, actually setting up campaigning organisations and pushing back and making sure that there are alternative voices, simply being able to say, well, you took this statue down even though all of these people objected. Well, you have to get those people to know that it's happening in the first place, to be able to object, so that you can at least hold them to account when they remove the statue without a democratic mandate. And having those things on record, not allowing them to erase our memories of these places. So, to make a very extreme comparison, everybody's been talking recently about the heritage destruction in Ukraine. And it's understood that heritage and the protection of heritage is something that is very important to people's national identity. And I think that's how the majority of people feel around the country when they're talking about the statues and street names in their own areas. Those things are there for a particular reason, and they mark the sort of threads of our history in the physical landscape. And it's very important that those things are not erased. So anything that local people can do to remember and commemorate, anything that is removed, anything that is renamed, and to try and organise, whether it's in your local council, in your local area, by making new campaigns or joining existing campaigns like the Free Speech Union or Save Our Statues or any of these other groups, that they find ways for their voices to be heard. And I'm loath to suggest it, because I don't think it's a good idea for society to be so politicised. But I also don't think there's another way. I think that people need to participate as much as possible and to be as aware as they can be. And GBNews is fantastic in informing people about these things, because they won't be informed on any of the other, like the BBC, for example. They won't be getting a proper view on all of those statues. You say you report on them every single week. Other channels are not doing that. So I think, being aware of what's going on and trying to organise in response to things is pretty much the only solution I can think of for now. If I come up with a better one,
well,
I'll be
someone
sure
has
to let you know.
Striptease, first the shoes.
And you can listen to my whole conversation with Emma Webb on my podcast, which is called Free Speech Nation, the podcast. That goes live right at the end of this show. That's at 9 p.m. if you're a new viewer. It is just after 8 o'clock. You're watching Free Speech Nation with me, Andrew Doyle. Without further ado, let's get some more questions from my lovely audience. So we've got a question now from Paul. Where is Paul?
I'm here.
Hello, Paul.
Hi, yeah. Do rematches always end in the same result?
Do rematches always end in the same result? So this is following today's first round of the French presidential election. According to an exit poll, Emmanuel Macron and Marine Le Pen have gone through to the second round on April 24th in a rematch of the 2017 election. However, unlike last time, this election is expected to go right down to the wire. Macron had 28.1% of the vote in the first round. Le Pen with 23.3%. Now, I never know what's going on with French politics because I never predict it right. The last time, Emmanuel Macron was so unpopular, they had a record number of spoiled ballots, which means that people they didn't want to vote for him, but they couldn't bring themselves to vote for Le Pen. And there's a real sense in which that name, Le Pen, in France is so toxic that but they still hate Macron. And since the Gilets jaunes and since his fudging over Brexit, people hate him even more. Is it possible that Le Pen could do it?
Oh, absolutely. There's a poll recently that actually put her 1 point ahead. She was on 50.5% and he was on 49.5%. And also, it's not since Charles de Gaulle in 1965 that a president with control of the Assembly has actually been re-elected a second time. So it would go against historical precedent for Macron to actually win. I mean, I thought the war in Ukraine would boost Macron. You know, he got to wear a polo neck and not shave for a couple of days and look a bit rugged. And also Le Pen had Putin in her election literature, which
that's
isn't
right.
a good
they had to get rid of that picture, didn't they? That picture was doing the rounds.
I mean, it wasn't a good idea to have that picture taken before the invasion of Ukraine.
But maybe they took it when, you know, maybe they didn't realise he was a bad guy. How do they do that? Do you have any thoughts on the French election, Tobias?
Very few thoughts.
Well, I mean, I appreciate the honesty.
I just keep hearing, she's a populist, but every time, she grows more and more. So
she does.
Yeah, so...
This is the point, isn't it? That, so at some point, I mean, she tried changing the name of the party because, National Front sounds a bit dodgy, right? And she has been trying to...
Says more about you, right?
No, it does, rather. And she's trying to rehabilitate it and get rid of the family name, etc., and that kind of thing. But it sort of hasn't worked. I don't know, but I never know, because polls, we don't trust them. I'm not talking about the nationality.
Quick break.
I'm talking...
You're a Nazi, I told you. You're going to invade Poland now.
The thing is, Tobias, it's true, though. It's the same with Donald Trump before and Hillary Clinton. I mean, you're talking about the polls. Well, they were saying that Hillary had something like a 90%. One poll.
She was definitely going to win. This is the thing. Polls usually underrate the chances of the more right-wing candidate, because when people are phoned up by a pollster, they don't want to admit that they're going to vote for the Darth Vader. So they keep it quiet. But then when they're in the privacy of the voting booth, they're like, yeah, you know what? I am going to vote for Darth Vader. And they're like, take that. So, so then you get Brexit and you get Trump. And to be honest, people decry a lot of Le Pen's policies as far right or populist, but populist ideas are populist because they're popular. And that's the basis of democracy. And maybe we should be looking at why, people think, maybe unfettered immigration into France from ideologies that are pre-medieval and completely opposed to Western society, with people who then go and commit horrific terrorist attacks, killing hundreds of people. Maybe there are some ideas why that could possibly...
We're talking about Scandinavians, right? Yeah.
We are.
I hear you.
I mean, I don't know, Leo. I think what Brexit proved to us and what the last election in this country proved is that calling your opponents racist really works. It really wins them over.
Exactly.
I think, well, I mean...
The dark trolls,
Let's go on to another question. Let's have a look. Now, this is from Angela. Where's Angela? Hello, Angela.
Hello. Can I ask, do sit-down protests work?
Do sit-down protests work? So there's been a lot of this
Look at
this
us.
week. Yeah.
This is what we did.
Is this a protest? Is that why you're here? Yeah, it could be. See where you go.
Comedy, who knows?
Supporters of Extinction Rebellion have staged a mass sit-down protest. This was in the heart of London's busiest shopping district as part of daily mass protests between now and Easter Sunday that the group claims will grind the capital to a halt. The protesters sat in Oxford Street and Regent Street, blocking traffic in both directions in what marks a significant change in their tactics from last summer when effective police action limited their ability to cause disruption. So is this going to help? I know you've got a lot of thoughts about Extinction Rebellion. You're a big fan, aren't you, Leo?
They know how to pick their moment. You know what I mean? Right in the middle of an energy crisis and cost of living crisis, they decide now is the time to go and try and stop people using oil. We're already not using oil because it's too expensive. You know what I mean? We're trying to muster support for Ukraine and not use Russian oil and gas. I don't know why they don't do this in Germany or a country in Europe that is still giving. Like Germany's still giving $800 million a day to Russia. So, for all that we say, we're giving Ukraine, £100 million worth of military equipment or whatever, Putin can buy, 10 times that every day with the money he's getting from Germany.
So, look, there's a question about tactics here as well, isn't there? I mean, to be a lot of the time that these protests happen, irrespective of where you stand on the climate debate, often when people are having their roads blocked, when people can't get to hospital, it really puts people off and it turns them against the cause, right?
Yeah, and especially when they do this sort of avant-garde dancing, save the earth. Do that. Punch them.
I mean, that is
good for you. It's not. Come on, move. Yeah.
That is bad. I mean, I went to one of the protests to sort of check it out. Emma Thompson was there, as it happens. She'd just flown in on first class.
Just
to try and deal with people's carbon footprint. And she was there giving a talk. And there were people doing sort of like there was sort of, I don't know, like quintets.
And there's always one guy from 1968 with the bongos.
There was all of that.
Yeah.
There was haiku, teenagers doing haiku, which is never good. They all had they were all carrying Starbucks cups, which was quite funny. So
it's like a Fringe festival. It's not a protest. It's just like do shows.
Really bad poetry, teenage poetry.
But I'm Swedish, so I have to support it because we have Greta Thunberg. So I have to.
That's right.
It's fantastic, really good. Yeah,
what's happened to her now? Is she?
She's 40. She's middle-aged now. But yeah, she's still fighting.
Yeah, good for her. Good for her.
Rambling,
OK, let's move on to another question now. So we've got, this is from Susie. Where is Susie? Hello, Susie. Hi.
Should you be allowed to change your identity multiple times?
Should you be allowed to change your identity multiple times? I think we've all done that on this panel, haven't we? In Scotland, this is a bit more serious. This is a murderer who killed a cellmate when only 18 years old. We're dealing with a murderer here. Born male, now identifies as female, informed the governor at the jail that he wants to be treated like a baby. And so this is Sophie Eastwood. There's a picture of Sophie Eastwood, been given a dummy, wearing nappies, and has meals blended like baby food. So bosses at the prison are taking their demands seriously. Tobias, now, look, we talked earlier about people who want to transition and they want people to use different pronouns. Babies? Am I being really reactionary by saying...
I love babies, but I don't like babies murdering people. That's
I know. If you want to identify as a baby, don't murder people, because babies don't do that, right?
No, they don't.
No,
it's
unconvincing, is what I'm saying.
They just pee their pants and just like, that's all they do.
That's all they do. Yeah. I mean, this is.
But why he, she, it? Is he a she or a he or a baby? Or...
It's a male who identifies as female.
Yeah. Okay.
No, and now identifies as a baby.
Baby. So no pronoun, pre-noun, because she's not.
It's a pre-noun. Yeah. Could be that. What do you make of this? I mean, would you support? I mean, do you support people's right to transition and change their pronouns and everything? Do you support this individual's right to be a baby?
Yeah, and I look forward to Keir Starmer being asked to define what a baby is. That'd be great. I think, I'm all for people, if you want to dress up and, poo in a nappy, go nuts, but not in my taxes. This is a prison. It's not a taxpayer-funded fetish dungeon.
Well, look, I don't think we can top that. Let's move on.
Poetry.
This is beautifully put. Now, a university, this is another story that I read about this week. I was very interested. This university literature course removed Jane Austen from the course to help to decolonise the curriculum and, quote, contribute increased diversity on the syllabus. This is Stirling University's English literature programme, has replaced the famous author of Pride and Prejudice with award-winning writer Toni Morrison, who is known for her works about the experiences of African Americans. Now, I should just say, firstly, I think Toni Morrison is a brilliant novelist, and I think the idea that she wouldn't be studied at university is weird anyway. I mean, I studied Toni Morrison at university. I think it.
You did?
Yeah, but what I should say about this story is, a lot of hay has been made about this online and in social media, but I wonder whether this is one of those sort of non-stories, because this was a particular course. It was a special authors course, which gets updated every year, and they bring in new authors and they take other authors out. And it's been framed as a kind of Jane Austen's been cancelled. I don't think that's happened. I think they've just, this year she's not on the course, and this year Toni Morrison is on the course. So I think it's just always worth being wary of these kind of stories and the way in which they can be spun, spun normally by people like me, and I think it's really important to be aware of that. By the same token, the university did use the language of decolonisation.
Yes.
Right, and that in a sense invites that kind of misapprehension of what's going on. So they're sort of asking for it a little bit, aren't they?
Yeah, of course, yeah. But does she have any connections with slavery and stuff?
Yeah, her father apparently was connected to a slave plantation in Antigua. Is that right?
Yes, and there was another alarmist story about Jane Austen a number of months ago where they talked about how because of the type of because she used sugar in her tea, and that was sourced from a plantation, therefore she was supporting the slave trade. But again, I think it was a kind of overblown misunderstanding of what was going on here. I don't think people were serious.
If that's the case, I know a lot of people who are for slavery because they use sugar.
They use sugar in their tea, and that's connected, exactly. So I think but I also think there is a problem with the notion of decolonising curricula.
Yeah.
The fact that, for instance, Sheffield University put out a video saying that the only reason we study Virginia Woolf and Blake and Shakespeare is because they're white.
Really?
It's like, no, that's not true. And if you think that, you shouldn't be running an English department, frankly, So I think things can go too far. But I think in this case, probably a non-story. Are you a fan of Jane Austen, Leo?
I've not read any of the books. I saw a couple of her films.
She's big on TikTok. It's fantastic.
Yeah, well, a girl made me watch them, and I like RoboCop, stuff like that.
RoboCop is a lot of similarities with the Jane Austen oeuvre.
Really?
Yeah, no, there aren't. OK, so one quick story before the break. Should the Winston Churchill statue with Franklin D. Roosevelt on New Bond Street be removed? So this is a report by Westminster Council into over 50 monuments that has deemed the statue to be vulnerable due to what the document termed Churchill's apparent racist views. I think this is an ongoing thing, and I think you read some of the things that Churchill said and you think undoubtedly that was racist. I'd say some of the things he said were racist for his time, actually. But again, they were not considered remarkable in his time, right? So
good distinction, yeah.
And would you suggest that maybe Churchill did some good things as well?
Some good things. He saved the world from Nazi tyranny, and he played a part in creating the welfare state, right? He was part of the whole welfare state program.
But
so that's quite good, right?
But that's not the issue, though, is it? I mean, he's also been accused of being partly responsible for the Bengal famine, for instance, and this is something that gets brought up again and again. Yeah. But I think when you talk about someone's legacy, in a sense, you have to look at, you know, the statue isn't there to commemorate his participation in the Bengal famine, which, by the way, is open to all sorts of misinterpretations by historians. Historians are sort of saying, well, was it the case? I mean, the defence of Churchill is that he was not aware of what was going on with food distribution in India, and that this was just a policy decision that went wrong, and that he wasn't. But a lot of people, activists, would say that he deliberately tried to commit. Cause a famine, which
I can't really see the motive for him to starve lots of Bengali people.
But that said, failings of that kind should be spoken about and discussed. Yeah. Do you think they should remove the statue now?
No, absolutely not. I mean, again, it's what wokists do is they focus on a tiny aspect of somebody's entire oeuvre. So, you know, Churchill, like you say, he defeated Hitler, who even the wokest people must appreciate that Hitler was quite a bad guy. You know,
it's quite good to have on your CV. Defeating Hitler is quite...
Defeating Hitler trumps a lot of the other stuff, and it counts for a lot. You know, if you're a fireman and you carry all these people out of a burning building, and then somebody turns up and is like, well, what about my microwave? You know, it's not...
I think this is very interesting, and it comes down, I think, to a debate about what are these statues for? I mean, do we see these statues as celebratory of the worst aspect of someone's character, or do we see them as aspects of the historical landscape, which can be good and bad, and that actually, in terms of history, it's probably best not to eliminate aspects of history, but sort of remember the triumphs as well as the villainies. I don't know.
What's the end game? You're going to take every statue away and every building, and a racist guy lived there 1755, take the building down, and you can just...
The end game is miserable. The end game is bleak. So hopefully we won't get there. But anyway, I brought you on as a Swedish clown to be fun and light.
Oh, sorry.
And you're just... now you're doing dystopian...
Armageddon is coming, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's a doom monger, honestly.
Have you heard nothing about Sweden?
No, actually, Sweden's pretty bad. But we'll come to that, I'm sure, in the next section. After the break on Free Speech Nation. Joining me in the studio is Gwen Madiba, who's founder of Equal Chance, a charity helping black families to flee Ukraine. See you in 2 minutes.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in the big question, should we bring back hanging for the worst crimes? We'll speak to former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe on whether the death penalty should make a return. Reacting to the big stories of the day is my all-star panel, including best-selling author and Sun columnist Tony Parsons. We'll be looking at whether inheritance is immoral and is Simon Cowell right that 60 is too old for dating. And in my big opinion, Boris Johnson is absolutely right to stand up for women's rights. See you at 9.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Now, more than 4.5 million refugees have left Ukraine since Russia's invasion of the country, while an estimated 6.5 million people have been displaced within the country. But reporters have documented dehumanising treatment against international students from Africa, South Asia and the Middle East on the borders of Ukraine. Gwen Madiba, founder of Equal Chance, has been helping black families to flee Ukraine, and she joins me now. Gwen, everyone. Thank you so much. Now, can you tell us a little bit? One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about this is I feel it has been underreported generally in the media. I think people don't know what is happening. And you've been out there in Ukraine. Can you just give us some background to what's going on here?
Well, it's been very difficult for the students and for families as well, black people in general. On February 27th, I received a call from an international student from Swaziland named Vukile Dlamini, and she was trying to cross the Suret border between Ukraine and Romania. It was very difficult for her. She and other black people were asked to wait 8 hours in front of the line, and they were also asked to go to the back of the line because the front of the line was reserved for white Ukrainians. One of the students, Mukunze, refused to go to the back of the line. He was severely beat up by a border agent who broke his shoulder. So that was the first incident where I felt helpless. You know, I was on the phone listening to Vukile, hearing Mukunze cry, and I thought to myself, we need to do something. This cannot be real. And then when I went on Twitter, I saw a young man, Samto Ora, who had also documented via videos the inhumane treatment of black people at the border. And so I decided to rally a coalition of black organizations from around the world to support members of our community because they were really left behind.
Yes, because I think a lot of people are seeing what's happening in Ukraine and they think, you know, obviously there's a major refugee crisis, but they don't focus on this detail, that there is racism at the border. There are people who they don't want to help.
Absolutely. There's racism at the border. In fact, one of our students, once she crossed the border, was trying to report that. She was even contacted by people in Ukraine saying that if she continues to denounce racism, that she will have her study permit revoked.
Right.
And that has been extremely difficult. We have mothers, this mother that had just given birth, and she was asked to walk miles to the border, and her C-section ripped, and she's currently at a hospital in France.
So why is it, do you think, that people aren't reporting much on this? Is it because no one wants to paint Ukraine in a bad light or suggest there are problems amongst Ukrainian soldiers?
I mean, it might be this, but it might be that people just don't care and don't want to talk about these stories. And this is why it's important to have spaces like this. And this is why I'm really grateful to even be able to sit here today and for you folks to give me the opportunity to share the stories of many, many community members.
I think it's very important. And so you've set up this group, Equal Chance, and this is a relatively recent development.
Well, Equal Chance always existed.
Right.
So it's the Global Black Coalition that I co-founded with Vukile Dlamini, this young student. It's a coalition of organizations from across the world, Black organizations, but also allies, because it is important to work together as a community, as a society under one roof, as just one people, and combat racism and support those who need it most. And the people of Ukraine need it, but also the permanent residents of Ukraine who are not Ukrainian, they need the support as well, and they need to be treated equally.
Yes, because I mean we hear a lot of discussions about racism in the UK and America, but then when you come to these even war-torn zones, there are issues there that need to be addressed, and it's very difficult, of course, because of the conditions out there.
Absolutely. It is difficult. It's difficult to get the stories out as well. It's difficult to have the media attention that it needs to have. And this is why and beyond the media attention, it's difficult for our community members to have access to essential resources and services that they need. And this is why we needed to come together as a coalition to best support them. And this is why we need to keep advocating for them, because when we look at some countries in Europe, they're not welcomed. Many of our community members are not welcome there. We're looking at some of them who are applying for an S permit in Switzerland, where Society Moko, one of our coalition members, are working hard to support them. Folks make it so difficult for them to obtain papers, yet at every train station, every airport that I get to, I see, all these beautiful, welcoming messages for people of Ukraine. But every time my heart breaks, because I know that it's not for everybody.
Yes. And you've been out there yourself and you've seen it. But how does it feel to be there? Because surely there's a limit to what you can actually do. You see this stuff happening, but what can you actually practically do?
Well, what we can do is continue to support them by sending them taxis and buses to escape Ukraine. I'm very proud of the work that we've been doing at the Global Black Coalition. We've been able to save 41 students from Kherson, and we only have one African student left in Kherson who will be evacuated within the next 24 hours. Folks can support us as of tomorrow. globalblackcoalition.org will be live, and people will be able to go and donate through Global Giving, which is a platform that we're now using to help with the relocation of members of the community. They can also send an email to president@equalchance.ca if they'd like to learn more on how they can help. But the website, globalblackcoalition.org, will be live as of this evening or tomorrow morning, and folks will be able to go online and donate.
Well, I think it's a really, really important cause, and I think you're doing wonderful work to
Thank you so
bring
much.
it to light. So thank you very much, Gwen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Now we're going to go for a quick break, but join us after the break when we're going to have Brendan O'Neill from Spiked Online. See you then.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain, loss, and destruction grows by the day.
The people of Ukraine urgently need our help.
Already a vast humanitarian operation is underway. Britain's Disasters Emergency Committee, or DEC, brings together 15 leading aid charities to respond to overseas disasters quickly and efficiently. These charities include the British Red Cross, CARE, Oxfam, Save the Children, and World Vision.
Their teams are working on the ground in Ukraine and neighbouring countries to bring vital aid to those who need it most. If you can spare it, your gift to the DEC's humanitarian appeal will go a really long way.
£10 provides essential hygiene supplies for a person for a month.
£50 provides blankets for 4 families.
£100 provides emergency food for 2 families per month.
It's easy to give. You can donate online at dec.org.uk or call the 24-hour donation line on 0370 60 60 900. If you prefer to send a cheque, please post it to the Ukraine Humanitarian Appeal, PO Box 999, London, EC 3A 3AA. To give £10 on your mobile, simply text the word crisis to 70150. Standard network charges apply for calls and you must be 16 or over. Texts are charged at the standard network rate and your £10 donation will be added to your bill.
100% of your donation goes directly to the DEC to save lives and deliver critical support where it's needed.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. So every week we dedicate this part of the show to the world of social media. First up, we've got this video.
I know what the answers to this question would be, but, you know, do you feel comfortable with me using, female toilets?
Oh my God, of course.
But does that depend on me having had surgery?
No.
What would you say? I don't want to dwell on this for too long, but what would you say to those people who would have an issue sharing a public bathroom with me?
Oh my goodness. Say, that's another human being.
For some reason, it's more annoying that Keane is playing in the background. But anyway, so that was actress Emma Watson talking to Paris Lees, who was asking her if someone like herself, like Emma, would feel comfortable sharing a public toilet with her. But no, I don't know what it is. There's something about Emma Watson, and I think it's because in the Harry Potter films, of the three children who were sort of plucked from obscurity to become stars, she was always the worst. I mean, she couldn't act at all. Like, it was just really, really bad. And so she should be quite grateful, I think.
She's the most ungrateful person on the planet.
Oh, clearly. Yeah.
It's like of J.K. Rowling every minute of the day.
It's an odd one because she owes her entire career to J.K. Rowling.
You've got to wonder which branch of Pizza Express she'd be working in if it wasn't for J.K. Rowling.
I should like to say there's nothing wrong with working in Pizza Express.
No.
There's nothing wrong with that at all.
But it's objectively not as good as being a multi-millionaire Hollywood actress.
Well, it depends on your... They give you free pizzas.
Yeah, Prince Andrew pops in sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. It's not so bad. But I mean, none of them were particularly good actors. They were just very, very lucky. No children are good actors, really. But none of them really developed into good actors either. So it just strikes me as very strange that they're not a little bit grateful to J.K. Rowling.
She's acting now, I think. Look at those eyes. Oh my God.
Yeah.
She's acting now. Is
but it's also, that question is very weird. Like Paris Lee saying, would you feel uncomfortable with me in the toilet? It's not about Paris Lee.
Who was the interviewer?
It's Paris Lees. It's a trans activist, Paris Lees. But it's not about Paris Lees. Of course, no one would feel uncomfortable with Paris Lees there. But it's about the principle of having single-sex spaces. And when it's framed in that way and personalised about that individual, it actually isn't the question that anyone is asking. But
it's about transgender women like me. They're the ones you need to worry about. You know what I mean? And also Emma Watson, she's a multimillionaire. She's got bodyguards. She doesn't need to use public toilets. She's probably got flunkies carrying a commode for her at all times. Like, she's never going to be in that situation.
No.
So for her to be dictating to the world, what the rules should be is ridiculous.
Would she share a room with J.K. Rowling, I wonder?
Oh, no, probably not. This is the thing. There's an odd way that's framed as well. Like the way that Emma Watson is talking there, it's about, it's just, I'm really compassionate and I'm the good person.
Yeah.
But the people who want to preserve single-sex spaces for women are also good, compassionate people. They don't hate trans people. They're not. This is about the reality.
And they're often women, and she's a woman, so she should understand that you don't want to see a little thingy.
Well, it's not just about that. The reality is that the vast majority of that women face disproportionately attacks from men. Like, that's the truth. Like, sexual assaults are committed overwhelmingly by men. It isn't. There's no suggestion here that trans people are inherently predatory, or even that men are inherently predatory. It's just that men are far more likely to do.
Statistics, right?
It's a statistic, right? So so then how do we address this when it always comes back to accusations of hate? It always comes back to accusations of transphobia. We get nowhere.
Yeah, and it's one of these intractable issues because obviously there are transgender women who've put the effort in and look like a woman, and it would be ridiculous if you made them use the gents' toilet. Right. But then there's just opportunistic predators, like the guy who named himself, who named herself Karen and went to jail in Scotland.
This is Karen White.
Karen White.
Who then committed sexual assaults on women having identified as female. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which apparently never happens, except it does actually happen.
And
anyway.
what would Emma Thompson say? That's another human being.
Yeah. Emma Watson.
Sorry, was it Emma Thompson?
You said Emma Thompson.
I'm sorry. Extinction Rebellion.
OK, we're going to just move on now. This is a video that, this went pretty wild this week. Let's have a look at this one.
Y'all thought me teaching the children about me being poly was crazy. But not only that, but they also know that I'm gender fluid. At one point last year, I had explained to them that I was not Miss Lois or Mr. Lois, it's just Lois because I'm not a boy or a girl. And this was all well and good until October, when I also explained to them that I'm pagan, so I am also a witch.
OK, so that was a primary school teacher in Florida who's come out to her class, not just as polyamorous, gender fluid and pagan, but actually a witch. There's a real genre here, Leo, isn't there, of TikTok videos with sort of primary school teachers with various colours of hair talking about how they're coming out to their pupils and sort of teaching them about gender fluidity. What's going on?
It's quite disturbing. I mean, for a start, I think the only thing that that person could teach a child is where to score crystal meth. To come out as a witch. Remember when people had private lives and they were called private lives? Why can't we go back to that?
Do you have many witches in Sweden?
No. Well, we got ABBA. No, but she clearly needs medication and a hug. I mean, and if she's a witch, we should burn her. That's my opinion. Seriously.
That's what they used to do.
She's clearly weird. I'm sorry. And to have her near kids. Hello, kids.
What I don't understand, though, but if you're a primary school teacher and you're really, really odd, you would probably keep that to yourself because you want to keep your job. Why broadcast it over TikTok? It just seems like a basic rookie error.
But so what does it mean when? Okay, she's a witch. So does she have a broom? Or how does she?
I presume that.
Don't witches drink blood? What do they do?
Yeah, witches consort with Satan. Yeah. Which I would have suggested disqualifies you from teaching children. Yeah. I just think there's something about that that I was. Does she sacrifice lambs on the desk? What anyway, look. Whatever, each to their own. Live and let live, but don't be a teacher. Okay, let's go now. Don't be a witch. Don't be a witch. Exactly. We've got another video here. Let's have a. No. We don't have that one. Sorry. We're going to move on. We're going to go now to an interview. We have got Brendan O'Neill back, and I want to discuss his recent article for Spiked Online. This is about the slur Nazi. We were discussing earlier in the show about how the way Nazism, fascism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, these words are just thrown around so promiscuously online that they've almost lost all kind of meaning. And Brendan wrote a really interesting article about this week. Vladimir Putin used the term Nazi when trying to advocate his invasion of Ukraine. He said he wanted to denazify the country. So here to discuss this with me now, I have Brendan O'Neill. Brendan, thanks so much for joining us.
Hi, Andy.
Brendan, can I ask you about your article here? Now, surely Vladimir Putin is using the term Nazi as a kind of propagandistic tool. That's what he's trying to do. But you've drawn some really interesting parallels between that kind of behaviour and the behaviour of activists over here. Can you explore that a little more with me?
Yeah, I think there's a common bond between how woke people in the West behave and how Putin is behaving in relation to Ukraine, which is this idea that Nazis exist everywhere, that we have to devote ourselves to eradicating these people from public life. And generally the use of that kind of 1930s fascist style language to demonize one's opponents and to justify one's own actions. We see that in the West all the time now. Everyone gets called a Nazi or a fascist if they fall foul of the kind of woke ideologies, or if they voted for Brexit, or if they voted for Trump. And Putin is using a similar tactic in relation to Ukraine. He's essentially saying, it's a Nazified country full of neo-Nazis, and I have to go in there and cleanse it. So if you find yourself using the same political tactics as Vladimir Putin, I think you should be a bit worried.
But why is it that this has become so persuasive? Because any of us who know anything about history know that fascism and Nazism, these are very specifically tied to a specific period. This is a militaristic, authoritarian movement that believes in racial purity, and the militaristic repression of dissent. We all know that. But to suggest that that's the same as someone who voted Leave in the EU referendum, that is historical illiteracy, isn't it?
Complete historical illiteracy. It just doesn't make sense, except as a very cynical, opportunistic way not to have to engage with your critics or your opponents, because if they're just fascists, if they're just Nazis, then they just deserve to be punched, they deserve to be banned, they should be cleansed from public life. So it's a way of avoiding discussion. It's a very cowardly tactic, but also it really relativizes history, because if everyone is like Hitler, if everything is like Nazism, then you're really actually relativizing the period of the Holocaust itself. You're making it appear like a mundane event in human history. That kind of thing happens all the time. Donald Trump was like that. Boris Johnson is a bit like that. People who vote for Brexit are like the people of the 1930s who murdered their neighbors or who did other unspeakable things. So you make the worst crime in human history seem normal by talking about it all the time and using it in contemporary discussion. So it demeans historical memory, and it is used as a kind of cowardly, censorious tactic in the here and now. It's bad all round.
So is there a way that we can push back against this? Because you'll know this week, the Gibson's Bakery in Ohio successfully upheld their lawsuit against Oberlin College was upheld because Oberlin College had participated in a smear campaign calling them racist. And they weren't racist, and they've won over $30 million as a result of that. Do you think there's the way in which the word Nazi is thrown about, it's actually quite a serious accusation. It is it not, libel?
It's completely libelous. Every day I go on the internet, I think a lot of people should count their blessings that I don't believe in the libel law, and I would never sue anyone for libel for that reason. I get libeled all the time. So do you, Andrew. So do lots of people, even those of us who consider ourselves as coming from the left, who simply disagree with contemporary left ideologies. Even we get called far right and fascists. It is libelous. I'm not sure that suing people is the right way to push back, because that won't necessarily change the culture. What really needs to change is this culture of demonization, this culture of censorship, and this culture of using the worst slurs in history to try and shut down contemporary discussion. So we need a culture of freedom and openness, and we need to argue back against the use of the word Nazi rather than trying to ban it.
Is there a sense in which all of this is connected to a new activist ideological movement that is obsessed with language, but more than that, doesn't mind redefining terms and also denying that they are redefining terms as they are redefining terms? And what we end up with is this situation where we can't have debates. All we've got is insults because no one has shared definitions anymore.
Yeah, we always feel like we're speaking at cross purposes with all sorts of people, and it's like we come from different moral universes. But I think one of the reasons why the identity set in particular is so keen on the Nazi slur is because they do live in an echo chamber. They are not used to being criticized. In fact, they hide away in safe spaces in order to kind of protect themselves from criticism or disagreement or people who have a different point of view. So they really do come to conceive of criticism as something that is outrageous and possibly even violent. So the more they hide away from robust public discussion, the more they convince themselves that people who criticize them are literally like Adolf Hitler. So I think they're really harming themselves with this force field of censorship that they put around their ideas. The more openness we have in all these kinds of discussions, the better it will be for progressive people like us, and the better it will be for them too, because they'll learn how to put up with critical discussion.
But that's a really interesting point you raise, because, I mean, when you think of Vladimir Putin talking about how he needs to denazify Ukraine, we can all see how strategically that makes sense just in terms of propaganda. There's a logic behind it, however abhorrent we find it. Whereas I'm getting the feeling that when people over here talk about Nazis or talk about gender-critical feminists as being fascist, as has happened a lot, they've started to believe it themselves. Am I wrong about that?
No, they really do believe this stuff. And that's what makes it very difficult to have a rational, reasoned discussion with them, because they really do believe that the feminist who thinks a man should not go into a woman's changing room and get his penis out, they really do think that that feminist is a fascist and should be no platformed. It's interesting that the no platform policy on campuses originally started with targeting the far right and neo-Nazis, but it's now extended to gender critical feminists and all sorts of people who simply go foul of the kind of contemporary woke way of thinking. They really have come to believe that there are lots of Nazis and fascists out there, and that anyone who disagrees with them must come from the far right. And that's another, I think that also speaks to the delusions they've wrapped themselves in by hiding away from normal critical discussion. So the answer to a lot of these problems is actually to have more freedom of speech, more robust debate, and to educate people into how to take criticism and how to argue back. And the lack of that, I think, contributes to this culture of insult and demonization.
So how can this be solved in terms of university campuses? I mean, you mentioned there how the origins of the no platforming policy was in order to keep the far right and specifically fascists off campus, but that even at the time, I remember you've written about this before, that even at the time people were warning how this could be exploited to include people who just weren't fascists at all. Do you think that the way in which we can solve this problem, specifically when it comes to universities, is government intervention? Because, of course, the government is attempting to do so. Do you think that's the way to do it?
I'm not convinced that the government is the right tool to use. I understand that there are people in the government who genuinely want to do something about censorship on campus. I think their heart is in the right place. But I think if we end up in a situation where the government is essentially forcing student societies to host people they don't want to host, then we've got a problem too, because you're being compelled to organize debates or to host speakers who you don't particularly like. I think they should host all sorts of people. I think they should have open, free debates, but forcing them to do so, I think, is the wrong approach. I think the best approach, and we have seen this on campuses in the UK, is where students themselves get together, set up free speech societies, invite people in to talk about freedom of speech, and to make the most important argument about freedom of speech, which is that if you want to enjoy it yourself, you have to defend it for your enemies. That argument has been made by everyone from Thomas Paine right through to George Orwell, and it's the lesson that the contemporary left forgets at its peril. At the moment, it's riding high and censoring people, and Silicon Valley and other institutions are on its side, but the wind will turn, and eventually it will be sections of the left that are getting censored, and they will have no one to blame but themselves.
Sometimes I feel, though, that we've kind of lost this argument on my more pessimistic days, just because I feel that this perception that language in of itself is a form of violence, or at least that once these bad ideas are out in the world, they sort of infect people and you can't control them. It's like a virus from a laboratory. I feel like that idea has just been so accepted by absolutely everyone, by Silicon Valley, by universities, by authorities. Do you think there's any way that we can win an argument that feels to me like it's already lost?
I think one thing we need to do is to highlight how dangerous that idea is, because if you accept that words are a form of violence, then you accept that violence is a legitimate response to words. And we've seen where that can lead with something like the massacre at Charlie Hebdo. You know, those two mass murderers lived in a society in modern France where they would have heard that argument, that to be criticized or to be mocked or to be ridiculed is a form of violence, and they decided to return violence on the people who they thought were being violent to them. This is, I always thought that those killers were like the armed wing of political correctness. This is the dangerous road we're going down if we equate words with violence. We have to maintain that important moral distinction between words and violence and insist that however critical and robust words are, they're never as bad as being assaulted. And until we maintain that distinction, we're always going to find ourselves back in this position where people will want to censor things because they will argue that they are just too awful to be able to put up with.
Thanks very much for joining me tonight.
Thanks, Andrew.
So, now this is the the part of the show where we're going to talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. So week after week, you always send in your emails and ask for me to solve your problems, and it never works, does it? All of the advice is usually quite bad. What I'm hoping this week, and you still keep writing in, so great, but what I'm hoping this week is with my wonderful panel. It's an international panel. We have Scotland and Sweden here, and I think we will be able to help you. Different forms of wisdom, I think. So let's see. Fingers crossed. Anyway, our first dilemma is from Caroline in Surrey. Caroline says, I'm getting an extension to my house, and I told my husband to hide our expensive jar of coffee and give the builders the cheap stuff. One of the builders overheard me and say it, and my husband reckons it will add £10,000 to our bill. What can I do? Okay. Leo, thoughts? What would you do?
Well, my thought is expensive coffee doesn't come in a jar. So, I hate to disappoint her, but she thinks she's got fancy instant. It's
no, exactly. No instant coffee is actually fancy, is it?
Exactly.
It's all trash.
Yeah, it's all trash.
Right.
Unless it's getting made by an Italian on a massive machine that you can travel through time with, then it's not fancy coffee.
I mean, but then what about this situation about upsetting the builders? I mean, once you've got the builders in your house and you've upset them, you can't bring that back, can you?
You can give them wine.
You could get them
It could be a very fun house.
Yeah, if you want a house that looks like an M.C. Escher painting, then you could do that. But I don't think that's what she's going for.
Are they part of the Extinction Rebellion?
Oh, that's why he's come over.
That's why...
Those sorts of puns. That's
don't
what we
create
want.
Themselves.
Have you ever been in this kind of situation where you've inadvertently offended someone who's working for you? Or,
I have. I killed them. No, but it's better to say, I'm sorry. Give them a bottle of wine and say sorry instead of sort of...
But this is really good. This is really good advice. Actually, I think generally speaking, we're not very good in this country at just being honest.
Yeah.
Like if you've made a mistake, if you've said something, I've had friends who've accidentally texted the people that they're talking about to the person, right? So they're slagging the person off and they're thinking of them, so they put their name in the phone and it goes out there, and then they try and weasel out of it with all sorts of elaborate excuses. Just phone them up and say, I'm sorry, that was about you, it wasn't for you. And maybe we should talk about that because I secretly think you're like this or whatever, It will be better than just this festering.
Oh, yeah, social media does that as well. So people send me Instagram stories of people being ridiculous, and then I reply to the Instagram story saying, what a plonker. Instead of replying to the actual person.
Oh, it's such a minefield.
Yeah. But with builders, I don't know. Maybe just offer them cash. See if you can get the bill down that way. I don't know. While we still have cash, until we have digital cash that has limits on where it can be spent, what it can be spent on, and things like that.
Or just write it out. Just say to them, "Well, I'm sorry, that coffee isn't for you.
Yeah.
You're the help.
Yeah.
Just no, but
if this is middle class coffee.
Yeah, look, you're paying for them. They're not going to be there forever. It's not like a husband or something. They can move on, right? Yeah. Just write it out. Be the snob. I told you it's going to be bad advice. Yeah. But there you go. You've had it. Let's go for another one now. So this is from Mitch in Oxfordshire. Give me the whole county there, Mitch. Couldn't be more specific. My friends say I'm tight, but I think I'm just careful with money. Do you agree with me that it's extravagant to spend more than £4 on a bottle of wine? Can I just listen? Yeah. I have to, so when it comes to wine, okay, and this is genuinely good advice here, I would say always spend more than £10 on a bottle of wine, because that few extra pounds just over, but don't spend 20 or 30, because the difference between a £10 bottle of wine and a £30 bottle of wine is nothing, but that little bit over, because basically if you're spending £6 on a bottle of wine, it's going to be swill. But that's the way I see it. What do you think, Leo?
How much did the wine that you furnished the audience with tonight cost?
I mean,
next question. £10 bottle to me.
Now look, I think it was kind of sub Blue Nun, but what I would say, but they're happy. It was.
They stole the wine. They stole the wine from the bakery when they came in. Yeah.
Exactly. Are you a connoisseur?
Alcoholic, you mean?
That's my polite word.
I love, but I agree with you. I'd rather spend £11 to have a good wine and enjoy it.
I mean, in Scotland, it's mostly Buckfast, isn't it? Up where you...
Buckfast, yeah. Well, it's actually expensive. It is. I think it's in the £10 bracket, just about.
That's ridiculous.
And with good reason. It's not just a drink; it's a weapon. It's fantastic.
Buckfast. You could get a Chablis for that.
Yeah, you could.
Why would you?
Because you're Scottish. That is why you wouldn't do it. You'd rather have something that's made by monks but it seems to have every chemical you'd find in a Chinese meth lab inside it. It's full of taurine and caffeine and stuff. I mean, the trouble with Buckfast is it's so full of sugar and caffeine and stimulants that you're awake when you've drunk enough to be lying down passed out. So you're still running around causing trouble when...
And that explains Glasgow.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I understand.
And sugar, that's slavery.
Yeah.
Why, by the way, why do monks really make Buckfast?
Yes, it's brewed in Buckfast Abbey.
I thought that was just like a marketing thing.
No,
it's actual monks.
My brother's done the tour. So,
really?
And it's not people dressed up as monks, it's actual monks.
As far as I know, they don't just identify as monks, they are monks. I'll check with Keir Starmer, but I think they're real monks.
So why on earth are monks trying to completely destroy society by producing this awful stuff? Well, look, we'll never understand. Anyway, let's get a quick dilemma before we go. This one's from Joe in Kent. Joe says, the staff in my local supermarket now call me the reductions guy because I always call in 30 minutes before the store closes. Is this something I should be ashamed of? What do you think?
He should move.
He should, shouldn't he?
No, I
mean,
mean, he can come in whenever he wants, right?
He can.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, you know, I mean...
He should, bring it up, talk to the manager and say...
He should mix it up a little bit, shouldn't he? I mean, he's getting himself a reputation.
Yeah.
What do you think, Lynn?
No, I really feel for him. Like, I mean, you shouldn't ever yellow label shame a customer. That's terrible. I'm one of the people who goes in and checks for yellow labels.
Oh, really?
And I mean, especially Marks and Spencer's. I'm not going to pay £7 for a ready meal. I mean, that's ridiculous. And actually, even at the yellow label price, it's already making me wince.
They're pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was a freegan. Used to literally go through the bins. A freegan.
What's that?
It's where you wait to the end of the day and all the sandwiches they didn't sell, they put them in the bin, and she used to go through the bin to get them. But in her, and she was really posh. By the way, she's just really tight, and she would say that actually it's all wrapped up, so there's nothing to be ashamed of there. But I would say
you are going through a bin.
You're going through a bin, so ultimately, I hope she's not watching. But I would say that is terrible. Anyway, listen. Go on, Leo. What were you going to say?
Well, I was just going to say she probably hasn't paid for a TV. She'll be watching through the window at Curry's.
Drinking 4-pound wine.
Now, we've got to end now. I could go on forever about that, but let's end now. Thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when Boris Johnson, of all people, stood up for women's rights. A bakery in Ohio won its court battle against Oberlin College, and Winston Churchill came under fire for his views yet again. It's almost as though he was born in 1874 when people had different values to our own. Thank you to my panel, Tobias Pearson all the way from Sweden and Leo Kurz. Thank you. And of course, to my lovely guests. We've had Sarah Phillimore, Dennis Kavanagh, Gwen Madiba and Brendan O'Neill. And by the way, if you want to hear more from Emma Webb, you can do that. That's on my podcast. It's called Free Speech Nation, the podcast. The full interview is live now. You can access that wherever you usually download your podcasts. It's also available to watch on YouTube in full. And by the way, if you would like to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you can do that. All you have to do is go to www.sroaudiences.com. It's written down there on the screen right now. You can apply there and come and join in. Stay tuned. We've got the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's coming up next. And don't forget, we've got Headliners every night at 11 p.m. That's the late night paper preview show where comedians talk you through the next day's top news stories. Thanks for watching Free Speech Nation. See you next week.
On Mark Dolan tonight, in the big question, should we bring back hanging for the worst crimes? We'll speak to former Government Minister Anne Widdecombe on whether the death penalty should make a return. Reacting to the big stories of the day is my all-star panel, including best-selling author and Sun columnist Tony Parsons. We'll be looking at whether inheritance is immoral and is Simon Cowell right that 60 is too old for dating. And in my big opinion, Boris Johnson is absolutely right to stand up for women's rights. See you at 9.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking dry for many in the morning with some brightness in the south. Let's take a look at the details. There will be some sunny spells in the southwest on Monday morning. However, a band of showers will move into the west with some heavy bursts at times. It will be a dry start in the southeast with some sunny spells. The wind will be brisk, which will keep frost at bay. Wales will wake up to a mixture of cloudy skies and some sunny spells. A band of showers will edge closer to the south coast during the morning. Skies will be cloudier in the northwest of England, but it will be a dry start. It'll turn windier throughout the morning too. Cloud will also extend across to the northeast of England. It'll be a mild start for many, but the brisk wind from the sea will make it feel cold along the coast. It will be a grey start in parts of Scotland with some patchy rain at times, although eastern areas could stay dry. Northern Ireland will have a dry but cloudy start before heavy showers arrive later. Skies will brighten in the south during the morning, but it will stay cloudier in the north. Heavy showers will move north towards noon. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
Every night at 11 on GB News, we bring you the next day's stories the day before.
It's basically like time travel.
If it's a big story, we'll cover it, guaranteed. But we'll also have some fun along the way.
Big opinions, big laughs. Sometimes big hair.
This is
Headliners, the paper review show that won't send you to sleep like the others will.
11 p.m, 7 nights a week. Join us.
Hello there, I'm Eamon Holmes.
And I'm Isabel Webster.
And we hope you can join us for
Breakfast with Eamon.
And Isabel.
You make me laugh out loud, belly laugh.
Is that important first thing in the morning?
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's me trying to be deadly serious. News is a serious business.
Yeah, I have to rein you in sometimes.
Well, it doesn't stop us laughing at it. It doesn't stop us having an opinion on what's going on.
Yeah.
And it certainly will not stop us reflecting what you think.
Weekdays from 6 to 9:30 on GB News.
Europe is in the grip of the most devastating humanitarian crisis since World War II.
The people of Ukraine are facing unimaginable suffering
as their homes are destroyed and their loved ones are killed.
Millions of people are being forced to flee for their lives, carrying only their children, their pets, and the clothes on their back.
The pain